Hi, ever wonder what it's like to work another profession or live in the underworld? Listen to unsuspecting riders give a 10 to 15 minute personal masterclass as I spontaneously interview them as they enter my taxi. I'm your host, Simon Rushton, and this is Taxi Chronicles. Morning. Yes, we're back with another rider, another episode. Today we have a guy who's a consultant in IT. So all those students out there, peel your ears back and listen to his expertise and how he got into the industry, what motivates him and what he has learned.
All right.
Nice to have you here.
Nice one. And what's your name? Sorry, I didn't.
Simon.
Nice to be with you, Simon.
Okay.
Thank you.
So how did you get into the industry?
So I started my job probably 3-4 years ago now, and actually I was doing a business degree in London here.
Okay.
And it was during that time, before that business degree, I was working as an engineer, but I decided during that time to get into sort of technology, and figured, it was a sort of a safe space to be for the next few years and so on. And IT and tech would always be in demand, so I went for that.
Yes.
And I joined an organisation which is basically an IT consultancy, and so I started working for them, and I've been doing that ever since. Yeah.
So you didn't have any qualifications actually in the IT industry?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my undergraduate degree was in engineering. Yeah.
Okay. But you saw job security, in essence, in
Yes.
IT.
That's right. Yeah.
That's good planning. Do you ever regret coming into IT and leaving the engineering?
I sometimes think about it. Yeah, my before doing all this, I was working actually for an oil and gas company.
Okay.
And I used to live up in Scotland, in Aberdeen. And I had a lot of fun doing that when I was a young lad.
North Sea Oil.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this was a few years ago now, but it was a good place to be back in sort of the early 2010s. And I enjoyed it, and I miss that sometimes. I enjoyed working outdoors. I enjoyed working with the young lads and so on in that sort of sector. And it's definitely a different, I've got a desk job now and so on, so it's a different type of work, and I miss that a little bit, definitely. Yeah.
People who work with their hands are more easygoing.
I think so, and I learned a lot from that job, which I try and still remember today. So
they're colourful characters as well. They've all got a story.
Yeah, exactly, and a lot of them have worked. These sorts of jobs and industries are. You'll find folk whose parents have done it, and maybe even their parents before them. And so there's a certain element of pride and family sort of history in it as well. And so people take it very seriously, and and they're humble, and they've got some good stories as well. So they're a lot of fun to work with. Sometimes you don't really, I think when you're sitting at a desk, you don't really discover that side of people so much,
I used to do a delivery job when I was at uni.
Okay.
And when I used to go, all the banks and the offices, like Bank of England and all the stock exchange places, all their waste is confidential.
Okay, yes.
So we used to pick that up. And when we used to walk in there, they all used to stare at me. And one time I thought, they probably don't see black people that often, therefore. And then I realised it's because they were bored.
Right.
They were all they weren't happy at their job.
Right.
But then when you went to whether a building site or whatever, they'd just get on and do what, unless you were blonde or something, they wouldn't pay you attention. So I see what you're talking about in that respect of things.
Yeah.
So you moved after, so tell us, what was a typical day like for you on the oil rigs then?
Yeah, that was...
what was a typical day like?
Very different to today. So, I would go and work... Typically in that sector, you get what's called a rotation, which means you work a certain number of weeks on and you get a certain number of weeks off. And obviously, when you start your career, you don't get a very good rotation. And as you graduate up through the years, you get a better and better one. To the extent where you might be working for sort of half the year. So you might have 3 weeks on and 3 weeks off, or 4 weeks on or 3 weeks off, and that sort of thing. And so during those weeks on, you basically fly to a rig, and you sit out there and you have to do your job, which is, depending on what your job is, might be a piece of maintenance, or you might be involved in the oil drilling process, which is what I was doing. And my role really entailed basically preparing the equipment to go to a rig, and then shipping it out there. And then you would fly out a couple of days later and meet it and install it, check it's all working correctly, and then fly home. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds quite dangerous, because I know the North Sea, that there's some horrendous waves and
yeah.
And the water's not warm.
The water's certainly not warm. No, and the weather can be a bit grim. But what I would say is, it does. I admit it sounds a bit dangerous on the face of it, but I have to be honest. It's actually statistically, it's a very safe industry to be in. It's actually safer than construction in terms of the number of accidents and fatalities that do happen. Yeah, it's per number of people that are working in the industry. It is actually extremely well regulated, is the oil sector, at a global level. I'm not just talking about the UK and the North Sea and whatnot, but even if you fly out to the Far East or Africa or North America, you'll find the same rules and regulations. And the industry has actually done a very good job since about the 80s. It's done a very good job of institutionalizing a standard set of rules and disciplines that are adhered to, and it's basically part of your training from day one, is how to sort of be and act safe when you're there. So it is a remarkably safe, you hear actually a very few injuries and incidents. Yeah.
When they're putting the pile down,
yep,
surely the waves are strong and it's like maneuvering it. How do they get that pipe to go down straight? Vertically and still do the... Do you see what I mean? There's a lot going on in the ocean.
And still draw.
How does all that work?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, good question. So basically, in the North Sea, you'll find that there are rigs which are actually planted onto the seafloor. So the North Sea is not very deep. It's actually about 150 meters deep. And in some places you can find that you can actually sort of drive down legs from the rig, basically, and it will settle on the sea floor. And of course, once you're in that state, you're attached to the bottom. And as long as you're sort of elevated above the sea level, you'll find that those waves don't bother you. In deeper places where there's where the rig is essentially floating, you have essentially a compensated system. So as the rig goes up and down with the waves, you'll have the system by which the pipe is attached to the rig is actually going in the other direction, and it's compensating. Okay. And it's clever tech, but it's that's exactly right. So the whole rig can be going up and down around you, and there's parts of the rig which are actually stationary with the seabed, and that's what keeps it all aligned. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So you moved into the IT industry.
Yeah, that's right.
I know you said you loved the construction. What did you love so much about IT, apart from it can't just be about the finance?
No.
It must be a bit more.
Yeah, certainly. So I think in the long run, it's if I think about what we might be doing in 10, 15, 20 years, I think a lot of it will be technology oriented, and it doesn't matter then so much if you're working in energy, or working for a hospital, or working for some other business. I think a lot of the work that you do will be organized around the technology that exists, and I wanted to get a grip with that, basically, and start to sort of understand it, or at least have some kind of say in that world.
I'll ask you this question in relation to both your careers.
Yeah.
What have you learned over the years that you wish you knew when you started?
Yeah, that's a good one, eh? What have I learned that I wish I knew? I think my first career. You're right in saying that I've had two careers. I do feel like I've had two sort of separate careers. I think during the first time when I was working in the oil and gas world, I was a bit blinded. I didn't quite realise maybe what was going on around me. I was just enjoying, having a job and doing a bit of work and whatnot. And I think that first job, I met folk there who were quite humble and have been doing the same thing for a long time. And I think maybe that didn't sink in immediately, but in the years since then, I've reflected on that quite a lot. And I think, it's amazing how much effort some folk put into a day's living. And I feel quite lucky these days to be able to sort of do all right and not have to sort of subject myself to sort of tough environment. And so I remember that basically, and I think about that quite a lot. And so I would say the first career taught me sort of a bit about doing an honest day's work. And it's tough out. It was tough working on rigs. Like, it's physical. It's not so mental. It's physical work. So that was the first one. I'd say the second one is I'm blessed to work with people actually who people have been working in the IT industry for a long time, right? Like, it's nothing new. And actually I've got some good mentors these days who invest a lot of time in me and sort of coach me around making progress in my day job. And they do, and I didn't have that before. I think so I'm quite lucky to have that these days. And so I would say the second learning from the second career that I've got is really to sort of rely on the others. Do rely on folk around you who have got some skills and have got some experience. I might not have done that previously, and now I feel much more comfortable and confident doing that because I do have some good folks, and it doesn't take a lot actually to reach out to them before you get some help, Yeah.
Okay, that's good. I used to work on the ships.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I did that for 5 years.
Oh, what did you do on ships?
Stopping the pirates hijacking the vessels.
Really?
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
I did that for 5 years.
Wow.
But the company was split security-wise because they're doing oil rigs off Somalia.
Yes.
Somalia.
There's a lot of that. Yes.
So we had teams who were looking after the oil rigs as they've been setting the oil rigs up.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. I just stayed on the Indian Ocean, out of the Indian Ocean area. I wish I'd done that in the Somalia because it's a place I'd like to go and see.
Okay.
And stuff, but it was interesting. Also, we was meant to get, because I used to be in the military, you can do a dive course.
Yep.
And the dive course will teach you how to, on dive course, you learn how to do welding.
Yes, that's right.
So,
yeah.
But I was talking to a couple of guys who've been doing it. They said it's great money, but the problem is your health deteriorates.
Yeah.
Your lifestyle, because you're always in these decompression units.
Yep.
And after a while, you're just, if you're meant to live to 80, you're looking at 70 or 65.
Wow.
So
yeah.
you might not want to stick to that, to that kind of thing. And then that's if you don't get the bends. They're really, like, obviously they're real big on health and safety.
Yep.
And stuff, but it's just you've got to learn to be comfortable.
I have to admit, yeah. So there's a lot in what you've just said to talk about, but on the welding front in particular, those deep sea welders.
Yeah.
They live. So they usually work for 2 weeks on and 2 or more weeks off. So that they're in a decompression chamber for 2 weeks at a time, and there's quite close quarters with the other lads, that they're in with. And they're there for 2 weeks, and they can, as far as I'm aware, they can still FaceTime with their family and whatnot. But it's definitely tough, and they are undoubtedly in a whole lot more risk than than the rest of us out on those rigs. And that's a tough life. And I have to be honest, I've only met a few welders in my time, a few deep sea welders, but they really are a different breed. You know, they're nutters, if I'm honest. They're nice, but they're nutters. Definitely, it's a different. They're a cut above the rest.
Yes, when you think about it, you've got highly flammable. Was it gas?
It's a gas. I think that, I'm not too sure, but I think it's a gas that they use. Yeah, like an argon or something.
Yeah. It's freezing cold down there, and it's just you and God, and maybe the other guy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, and you probably have the no alcohol policy.
Oh, certainly, yes.
So
There's no.
On the vessels.
Yeah.
But trying to tell the Eastern Bloc no alcohol didn't really work.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I see plenty of drunk captain and engineer, you know.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. And they had these compartments where they're hiding alcohol when we get to Saudi Arabia and all those places.
Right.
It was very interesting. But,
that must have been quite a life out there on the. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was good. It was good for the time. It's very lonely. You've got to learn to be comfortable with yourself.
Yeah.
You've got to learn to be able to communicate with people whose first language is not English. So
right.
You've got to be willing to do homemade sign languages.
Yep.
Which,
takes some doing.
It's like charades at times. You do like actual physical, things. But it's all fun and games, as they say. It's all fun and games. It's eye-opener to how different people live around the world. But when you pull up in pool, you make the most of your time ashore.
Yeah, certainly.
See that, and everybody becomes great friends from like, it's like the crew. I went to one night. I was meant to go ashore. I decided I was going to go, and I arranged for the taxi driver to take me to a club.
Yeah.
But I didn't think anybody else was going to go. But when I got there, I must have got there a bit late. The whole crew was there, but it was a great feeling. Everybody was just enjoying themselves. I don't know who was left on the ship, to be honest. But the whole crew was there. Yeah, it was great environment.
Fantastic.
But it's like an R&R moment, but just 6 hours or whatever, or 12 hours, depending on what shift you're doing.
No, that matters though. Even 12 hours off is it goes a long way. And were you working a few weeks on and a few weeks off, or
we did months? The longest
months at a time.
Longest I did was, it could be up to 1 week.
Okay.
But we did 6.5 months.
Gee, 6.5. You see, that's different, eh?
The longest I've done, and I was virtually doing the Irish jig when I got off to
I bet.
I was really happy.
Yeah.
But then I laughed because some of the Filipino crew were on there for a year and a half.
And it's funny, you get the same in the oil sector as well, eh? You like a lot of the folks who come from Far East Asia, they have different work-life balances, and it's the same actually from India and the sort of surrounding nations of India.
Yeah.
There's a small oil and gas industry there as well.
Yeah.
And the chaps who come from there, they have a different deal, if I'm honest, and it's pretty tough. A lot of them are working for less money, and they're also doing, they're away from their home for sometimes 8-9 months at a time, and that's pretty.
Yeah, the away
tough.
from home thing, I think is wrong, but the less money I don't. So I was talking to the first officer from, where is he from? He's Indian, the captain was in Pakistan, which is unusual, so they don't usually pair them together.
No, they usually don't get on.
Yeah, they pair them separately, but
yeah,
much different. So he said, right now we've been matched with the Ukrainians because there used to be a tier system.
Okay.
British people got paid the most, because they were usually coming from a naval background.
Yeah.
And obviously you've got the creme de la creme.
Yeah.
And so most British officers from the Navy go on leisure cruisers.
Yeah. Okay.
Or Shell. But then Shell was bought by some Arab guy, and he didn't want to pay them a lot of money. He wanted to cut the money, so they started to hire Russians and Ukrainians, if you see what I mean.
Right.
So you had those two different pay rates.
Yeah.
And then you had the Indian pay rate, Indian Pakistani, Bangladesh, Filipino, or that kind of pay rate, which is the lowest.
Yeah.
So some of them were complaining that they're on the vessel for so long, they should get paid more. So they agreed that they get paid the same as the Ukrainians. But the Indian first officer is saying, really, truly, we shouldn't, because we get that money so much in our country.
Yeah, goes a long way.
You're just looking. He said, and I was surprised he said that. But obviously, I'm not the human resources person.
No, sure.
He said because I build a house, I build 2-3 houses. Then I do extensions, and we never really get to spend the money. The wife and the other people, and that was his take, and I agree with him on that. I do agree. I think your pay should be according to your measure of your economy that you go back to, if you see what I mean. But that was one of those things. So on the IT consultancy,
go on.
Where do you see that going?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, the thing about being a consultant is that you're sort of, you're always at the request of your clients, to help them out with whatever their projects are. Mm-hmm. And so that's the thing, is that you can find yourself working for. One day I might be working for some sort of telecommunications company or something like that, and the next day I might be working for a bank, or might be working back in the energy sector for an oil company, and so I think generally it falls into, no matter who you're working for, it falls into two groups, right? I would say on the one side, there's the organizations who in any sector are doing very cutting edge, quite disruptive stuff, so they are the ones who are, the Netflixes or the Ubers of the world or whatever it might be. Like, they're the ones who are sort of wreaking a bit of havoc and, doing new and exciting things. That's the one side.
All innovative.
Yeah, the real innovators. Yeah, innovation is the right word. Yeah, exactly. They're the innovators. And then on the other side, there's those who are sort of the incumbents, and they might be trying to make efficiencies. They might be trying to reduce their costs to try and compete, or they might be trying to try and leverage some sort of new technology, maybe to make things more automated or more interesting or more engaging or whatnot. But generally speaking, for want of a better phrase, they're playing catch up, or they're at least very scared about those innovators who are disrupting, and that that's happening in every industry, whether it's the sort of taxi cab industry or Netflix and your DVDs and whatever it might be, there's
and the banking.
And banking, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you see a lot of, there's that.
A lot of banks have got the sack now, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Especially you think about retail banking these days. I mean, it's an amazing sector. Like, maybe 10, not even 10, but let's say 10 years ago, you would consider for your current account, we call it in the UK, like, you consider going to your Barclays or your HSBCs or your NatWest of the world. And nowadays, there's all sorts of Starling banks, yeah, exactly,
you
or
you don't speak to anyone.
Yeah, your Monzos or your whoever it might be, and it's all online and it's all managed and it's all through your app. And you know what, if you want it in euros or you want it in dollars for your vacation, you don't pay any fees to transfer that, and they've got some good products, and that's exciting. And
that needed to happen.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I'm all for it,
Especially
absolutely.
After the way the banks bankrupt, or the bankers bankrupt the world economy in 2008, they need to get.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a lot of work to do to repair their image. That's exactly what I mean. Well, that's exactly what I mean. Those are the incumbents that you're talking about, the Barclays, the HSBCs. It's those guys who've got a bad rep, and And I think the reality is the work that they do in their investment banks is very different to the high street banking that you and I have to deal with. But the fact is that they're all one name and they're all under one roof. Yeah. And
it's exactly the same conversation I was having the other day.
Really?
Yeah, with somebody.
Interesting.
It was a banker. He'd been in the banking business for like 30, 40 years.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was coming up with some things. But it was a bit like a boxing match. You know, you're bobbing and weaving, sparring, like it's what you're saying.
Yeah.
He was trying to justify the banking's behaviour, or the, you know, that they got a bailout, and I was just saying no.
No, forget it, mate. Yeah.
If you got thing, and he's saying some people got sacked and whatever, I said it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be allowed to carry that name. It should be like the Bank of London or Bank of England now. It's the taxpayers' bank, it should be.
Yeah.
And everything done for is our interest, not you, not your bloody bonuses. It was that kind of conversation.
Too right. Yeah.
And, and he said, yeah, well, what about a high street bank? I said, well, they're a different kettle of fish, but at the same time, they used to write you a 50 quid letter saying you owe them 1p if you went overdrawn.
Yeah.
So I don't really think much of those either.
No, exactly. Yeah.
He didn't really have a leg to stand on, the end of the cheek, but I said, obviously, I didn't beat you in a taxi to beat you up, kind of thing. But, if we're going to have this conversation, we've got to be true to ourselves.
No, absolutely.
In that respect. But what was funny, I was talking to another banker, and this is probably where you come in.
Yeah.
Because he was saying that because of new software now, when you may have need 10 or 20 bankers, you need 3.
Yes.
So a lot of them are getting sacked, and I found it's ironic because remember the coal miners days and all that. I don't know your age, but where the bankers used to throw £5 notes and £10 notes out the window, the coal miners to say, and all the manufacturers like the Ford car manufacturers, all those people were getting sacked.
Yeah.
Because of modern technology taking over, and now it's happening to them.
Yeah.
And they don't want to get manual jobs.
Yeah.
Because they want to be seen as a banker.
Yeah.
But then I spoke to another banker, and she was saying that in retrospect she'd be better off working at McDonald's when you look at the kind of hours you put. No, as an accountant, sorry. When you look at the kind of hours you put in, she's a corporate accountant or something like that. So they do like 18-hour day, well not 18 hours, but really long days.
Yeah.
And they just go home, have a shower, and come back to work. And but it's the kind of prestige of the job. But I look at it, if it sacrifices your family and personal time, then there's no prestige in it.
No, it's a tough one. I mean, there's lots to discuss in there, but I think on the automation side of things, that's a really interesting one, and there's a lot, I think, in the next. I'm not one of these folk who thinks we'll all be out of a job tomorrow, but I do think in the next 20 years.
Driverless cars.
Yeah, driverless cars. There's a lot of them.
Someone like me, will you? You'll be the robot will go.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I mean, it's no secret, I'm sure, to your listeners that we're in an Uber right now, and it's Uber themselves who are investing in replacing drivers with automated technology, and I think it's it's interesting what the your previous interviewees have said. Yeah, exactly, because I actually think that a lot of the automation work, the automation that will happen in the next few years actually won't be for what let's say won't be for blue collar jobs. It'll actually be for the white collar jobs. I think a lot of that sort of that desk work, a lot of that analysis, a lot of that sort of thing that previously you would have had folks in banks for, let's say, sitting at desks doing the sort of bit, analysis of things, actually is that is the stuff that will be automated. And actually in technology and in at least as far as I understand the whole sort of intelligence side of tech, it's actually the work, let's say the work of a taxi driver is more nuanced. It's harder to automate. It's actually harder to replace, because you have to understand a lot of things that are going on and take situational circumstances into consideration all the time. The chap ahead of us now is on the brakes and whatnot, and you're not exactly sure what's going on around. There's a tube stop. There could be someone running out the door and all that sort of stuff. And actually, that is hard to program. That is hard to get a robot to do. What is easy to get a robot to do is accounting. And actually, it's when I say the white collar jobs, that's what I mean. It's those sorts of things that are actually more at risk if I'm honest, then what I would say, than the work that you're doing, for example. I mean, I think that genuinely, and that's not a view that I have. That's talked about in the industry quite a lot.
Well, did you know Uber bought the drone taxi service?
Yeah, I think I heard about that.
Yeah,
yes.
And they sold it a couple of days ago.
Okay.
So one of the problems, I met a guy I met two guys. One guy was for the driverless taxis, Wyoming.
Okay.
He come from the States, and he happened to be my taxi. We talked about it. And the other guy was about the drone taxis. And what he said, because of London's really old, like 2,000 years old, you can't have drone taxis land in places because the city's not built for it.
Correct. I'm sure.
Now, if you build new cities, especially in developing countries, you could easily, at the end of each block, have a landing pad.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where they're looking in. I spoke to obviously I interview a lot of people. I spoke to another guy who works for AI.
Okay.
And he talks about in artificial intelligence cities, and he said that's what they're looking at. They're looking at how you can make everything within a city AI. So in essence, you don't go onto the driverless cars where there's, I think it's Uber or some another company in Wyoming. They got it in LA. And they've got an area where it's only driverless taxis. But the problem was that taxis will compute safety measures. I can turn left, I can turn right, blah, blah, blah. But a human being will say, I can fit in that gap. I'll take that as a chance. A boy racer. So you can't really have both driverless and taxis on the same road. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Humans driving on the same road.
Yeah.
So the people we rent these cars from, they were saying what they reckon the government's trying to do is stop anybody driving cars within inner London so they could just have a driverless car system.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what they reckon they're trying to do in the long shape of things, because they're just causing havoc right now.
Yeah.
Everything they're doing is just against us, and they say it's the environment, but it's not the environment.
No, they're trying to automate the whole thing. I mean, that's an interesting point, is that actually it's the transition that is tough. And it's not, obviously, today, let's say we live in a world which is, let's say, 99% manual in terms of driving, I'm talking about. And what you're saying is actually there's no situation that's viable with 50-50. And actually you've got to just, which is hard, right? Because you can't.
All or nothing.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to be all or nothing then. And so that's interesting, because you really can't switch overnight from one to the other. So you've got to, like you say, cordon off areas in which you do that, and then say, or risk the 50-50 scenario where you've got your boy racers alongside your robots, and your robots are making calls and decisions, and your boy racers are making different types of decisions.
One of the reasons we haven't got driverless cars, because this guy was saying the British government's giving them stipulations, and one of the stipulations is that if it's a driverless car, if there's some young people there and old people over there, and the car's gone out of control, the car must know to crash into the old people, because to society, young people are more valuable than old people.
Right.
It's the same if there's fat young people and slim young people, it must hit the fat people.
Right.
Because the fat people are more costly in society than, do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
I've heard of that. Yes, it's called the trolley problem. Is what it's called. Yeah. Have you? No.
I didn't know. Obviously I knew about the thing, but I didn't know about the term.
Yeah.
Trolley problem.
If you or your listeners are interested, it's a well-known what's the word? Sort of not a problem, but scenario in computing world.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the trolley problem, and by trolley I don't mean a trolley like in Asda or Tesco's or wherever you go shopping, but it's the phrase comes from the San Francisco trolleys, which are the trams that they have in San Francisco.
Yeah.
The overground trams.
Yeah, the ones that go up and down.
And the ones that go up and down the very, very steep hills they've got. And you can imagine on those steep hills if you've got a runaway trolley, yeah?
Okay.
So the idea is the trolley's broken, it's running down the steep hill, and if you can direct it towards one person or another, and by doing so you would, one person would die and the other person would survive, who would you choose, you know? And it's a very tough, you know, there's no answer. But, you know, but it's that very thing which needs coding in to the decision principles of an automated vehicle. Because if this chap ahead of us right now in the black Beamer, if he slams on the brakes, you can make a choice either to hit the back of him or swerve off and kill the cyclist. And if by killing the cyclist you will save yourself, you know, what are you going to do? You know, like, it's a tough call. And obviously
it's not with the, you because they're taxing a cyclist. You know what's going to happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, and obviously, you know, and that's the thing. Yeah. Naturally, you're going to save your own soul. You know, of course you are. I mean, and it's not a sort of decision that is actually made in real time. It's an instinct, and so naturally you swerve to avoid the car. And by default, you might hit a cyclist.
It's like if you're drowning and someone tries to save you.
Yeah.
And you're panicking. Kind of push them down to try and save yourself.
You're going to try and get buoyant. Yeah, you're going to try and get on top. Exactly. And so what computer programmers who are working for, let's say, for the likes of a Tesla, for want of another example, but, you know, if you're working for a Tesla and and you're doing the computer programming around this sort of scenario, you actually have to code that in. You have to write a piece of code. You have to write some code that says, if this Beamer in front of me slams on the brakes, am I going to hit him or am I going to swerve? And actually, what you find is that even by not writing the code or by writing nothing, the company is making a decision on what to do. Are you going to save the life of someone who's just bought a Tesla, or are you going to kill him?
And also the question is, because you know with the Tesla, I don't know if you own a Tesla.
I don't, but I've got a mate who's got a Tesla. Yeah, so I've
driven it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this guy was saying with the Tesla, this car does it as well, but I don't trust it. So I'm meant to be able to take my hands off and it could drive within the white lines.
Right. Okay.
Do cruise control.
Yeah.
Now, if I press the accelerator at all, it goes back to manual.
Okay.
So I must grab the steering wheel. So he must have pressed it on the motorway, tripped the cruise control and allowing the car to drive. But then he must have fell asleep or something and he kind of touched the accelerator.
Okay.
So it went out the lines and it scraped all down the hard shoulder.
Oh no.
But I said to him, what it should happen is when you press the accelerator again, even by accident, there's alarm rings. Hold steering wheel, or whatever, or just a beep, 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 beep.
Yeah.
So it's a safety measure. I said, you should talk to Tesla about that. You probably get some money out of it, you know?
Yeah.
And he said, that's a good idea.
Too right.
But I said, that is, because it's a covering for them as well. Safety. It's a safety measure you put in place that people can't go back to Tesla and say, you designed something that wasn't safe.
Yeah.
In that respect of things. But
yeah. That's worrying, mate. I think if he fell... If that happened to him, I think he's lucky, frankly. He only scraped the side of the car because you've no idea what could happen if you come off the road like that.
This car, if I fell asleep and I was driving and an object came in front, it would brake automatically.
It would,
It just stops itself. It's annoying at times. So sometimes you're driving and your judgment is not on the same car judgment, and then you just go because it brakes, and it's like, it's as if a child...
It's seen someone, or thinks it's seen someone. Yeah.
So there's all this sensor thing. What do you think about what Elon Musk is doing with the AI and the computer chips in the pig brain? He wants to do it in the brain.
Yeah. I've heard about that. It's called Deep Mind or something. He's called it. I think that chap Elon Musk is up to a lot of from an engineer's perspective, he's up to a lot of interesting stuff. He's up to all.
Mad scientist.
He's a mad scientist, and he's up to all the sort of stuff that, as a young lad, you might imagine some young boy saying, "Oh, I'd love to do all this stuff, when I'm older." So in that sense, it's very inspiring, and I hope that he converts a lot of young folk into studying science and technology in the years to come, because he's in that sense he's a real. I see him as a good ambassador for that sort of thing.
Still be a stoner and do all
exactly.
Joe Rogan, did you see
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, I like that Joe Rogan podcast. It's very good, and I did listen to that episode. Yeah, I think in terms of what he's doing for the pig brain stuff, it is very. I'm not. If I'm honest, I'm not actually clear on what he's trying to accomplish. You know what I mean? I'm not exactly sure what
he wants to do is, from what I understand, when you put the chip in, he's reading the neurological waves.
Okay.
The signal you give off in your brain, so the pig gives off in the brain. They don't know what that signals are, as in they can't read it right now. They don't understand it.
Yep.
But they're going to try and work out, based on the pig's actions, what is really happening.
Right.
Do you understand? And then they can move on to humans.
Right. So they're trying to understand the brain. I mean, that is definitely.
Now the question is, when they understand the brain, will they try and understand the woman's brain as well? That would be interesting. But the male brain will be, I want to fuck, I want to eat, I want to sleep.
I want to sleep. Yeah. Exactly. I want to drink.
Basic, yeah. The woman's brain will be going. I can see my women subscribers are just dropping off.
Oh dear, mate! I'm sure that they can crack the same jokes about us, eh? So who knows? I mean, it's certainly I think the word is a frontier of science. If he cracks that nut, he's quids in. But I'm not sure about him. At the same time, he's a bit of a nut himself. He called his kid like XA12 or whatever, and I don't know, man. Bit of a strange one.
He's trying to go to Mars at the same time.
Yeah, he's doing all sorts.
I'll tell you one thing: he's made his mark with Tesla.
Yes.
Because that big glass screen.
It's pretty sexy. Yeah.
And the handles that come in, that go out and lock in when you're driving, someone can't carjack you, they can't open your door.
Yeah. Very smart. Yeah.
It's just like, and then all it is, like, this car's got 2 batteries in, you've got very limited boot space. It's a hybrid.
Yeah.
But his car, the engine's the dashboard, the width and the thickness of the dashboard. And it's just a battery, circuit board, and air conditioning. The air conditioning thing is bigger than anything.
Right.
You've got a boot front and back.
Yeah. You can fit all sorts.
Yeah, it's superb.
Super convenient.
But I don't think the car. I think the car. He needs to come with a sexy 4x4 version.
Well, I saw that Tesla truck that he announced.
Do you like it?
The Cybertruck is the word I'm looking for. I did like it. I didn't like it, but also it's not for me, you know what I mean? He's not releasing it with me in mind.
Who's in mind for
I think he's releasing it with a bunch of 20-year-old people who live in Los Angeles in mind, They can ride around in their truck and... Yeah, exactly. I think so, yeah.
To me...
Yeah. You can pre-order one of them for $90 down, and then you'll get a spot on the build line. And then later on you pay $100,000 or whatnot. And so I think he's trying to entice a lot of young folk in,
in the tech world.
Yeah, exactly. In the tech world, exactly. And remember, folks in the tech world in California, they earn a lot of money. They might be 20, 25. But one thing I've learned working in the world that I work in now is that actually folks, if I compare the UK to the US, folks in the US, they earn a lot more than we earn, in terms of their salary. They do.
But they don't get free healthcare.
No. There's definitely
lots of things.
They also get less vacation. So they're not getting.
They get 2 weeks a year. Innit?
Yeah, exactly. It's something ridiculous like that. They're getting 2 weeks off. So there's certainly some. It's not all even Stevens. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's some trade-offs, but comparatively in the tech industry, you have to remember some people in who are good engineers in the tech industry, they might be earning 200-300K, and that's an absolute ton of money for a 25-year-old. And it's those guys who are absolutely more than willing to buy a Tesla truck, even if it is poor taste. You can't buy good taste though, eh? We all know that.
They can make it more sexy, man. I saw Lamborghini one.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Look at that. I know Italians are going to have more class and style than Americans, but
yeah.
Still, come on, man.
Yeah, the Urus, the 4x4.
Yeah. It's just like, it's just different. It's very, very different. But I wish Elon Musk well. I wouldn't be surprised if he's testing on ex-military or people who've maimed from the military, and those kind of things.
Yeah.
Testing on those people and all that. Like, was it? There's a movie about it, The Manchurian Effect.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if something like that's going on behind closed doors.
Right.
And stuff, because
he's trying to find some human subjects.
Human subjects to test on to get things like that.
Yeah, he's. I'm not sure. I'm less familiar with that deep mind stuff that he's on about, if I'm honest, than the rest of it. But I mean, I'm sure if he's investigating pig brains or whatnot, it won't be long before they're moving on to humans, and they're certainly going to need some humans to test.
He did say that.
And I'm sure they'll pay them handsomely. So that's part of the deal.
Pay dead men, man.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah. But last question.
Yeah, go on.
Great interview. I don't think I've ever done an interview this long in a while.
All right.
No, it's been very interesting. What's the impact you want to have on the world?
Good question. I think, look, from my perspective, I would like to encourage folk to study more science, to study more tech, and that sort of thing. And if I can, in the course of my work, and maybe through this podcast or any other thing I'm involved in life, if I can encourage just a few kids to go into the sort of science industry, I'd consider that a win. I think it's so important that we invest in that sort of sector in general. That and often, in classrooms, I remember when I was in a classroom, it was sort of easy to neglect. You know what I mean? It's easy one to overlook. That I would like to have that impact at the very least, I think. And leave it at that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for that.
Hey, no problem. There's the phone, mate.
Yeah, it's much appreciated.
We hope you liked that interview. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to get the latest daily episode. Ever considered investing in the continent with the fastest growing economy and population on Earth? The same continent that holds 30% of the world's known natural resources? Then listen to our sister podcast, Africa Investor Stories, where you will hear real investors with real stories from around the world share their experience of investing in Africa. We post Monday and Thursday at 10 a.m.